What's going on, buddy? So here today, this season 25 patch news just got a massive rework in terms of balance changes for a bunch of different classes and the gems for the season theme. So let's have a look at these massive changes, shall we? I'll leave timestamps in the description, so if you're looking for specific items that's been reworked or a class, make sure to check that out. So basically, with the first patch note that came out, there's a lot of issues in terms of the gems and classes not performing as well or performing too much as they would hope. There's been some rework done. So to start with, there's been some bug fixes. So basically, fix the bug where rank 2 soul shards affix's value sometimes could change after being targeted. This was kind of weird, but that's now been fixed. This one is massive. Fix the bug that could allow players to equip 2 lesser soul shards. This is basically why some of the classes can do 150 in like 2 minutes, because they were to double dip and having 2 of them. But we already knew this is gonna be changed, so that's good. And then the update a little bit in terms of the possible range for resistance and armor. And basically the development note here is that we're fixing several bugs that resulted in some soul shards powers being too much more powerful than intended. This is basically down to having the 2 of them, and specifically the Sliver of Terror and Essence of Anguish gem. Now for the Sliver of Terror, they now updated so your cooldowns are increased by 25%. For every skill and cooldown, you take 12.5% reduced damage and deal 25 increased damage. So basically a nerf from 75 to 25. This is a pretty big nerf. I was thinking maybe it was going to be nerfed by 75 to 50. They've gone all the way down to 25, so let's see if this actually makes it work or if this is too much of a nerf. But they've definitely taken the power down quite a bit. They've also reduced the power of Sliver of Terror's rank 3 upgrade Wing of Fire effect and increased the required kills to 100 to proc. So basically this Wing of Fire before could actually one-shot with Guardians at 150. So this is a very required nerf. And also increasing the required kills to 100 is also pretty good. This basically makes it more in line with the other gems. Fragment of Destruction. So they've added now that Fragment of Destruction rank 3 upgrade. When you apply a Mark of Destruction to an enemy, you increase your movement speed by 5% for 7 stacks, and you can have a max of 10 stacks. And they basically just remove the other rank 3 upgrade, so you increase the duration of the Mark of Destruction for 10 seconds. Basically, before, the Fragment of Destruction was kind of a support gem. It felt kind of weird. It was very unnatural to use. But now they've actually done a ton in terms of movement speed. There's going to be some really good builds with this, especially for something like T16 farming. Now, they've upped the Stain of Sin gem by quite a bit here. So basically, you deal 25% of the damage. When you kill 50 enemies, you spawn a pool of blood. Increase the damage done to elite enemies by 150% in the last 15 seconds. So basically, it's very different from before. Before it was actually you deal 250% increased damage to non-elite enemies and lasts for 7 seconds. Now it's actually a massive damage increase to elites. So they've gone the completely opposite way. This is very, very nice. This could actually help a lot of builds that actually struggle killing elite packs and actually kill the trash quite quickly. So this gem might actually be useful for a lot of builds now. And also they added the Stain of Sin rank 3 upgrades. You gain an additional Rift Progress Orb. This will actually result in a massive increase in terms of progression just for free. So they've removed the pool of blood now also freezes non-elite enemies. This makes sense because this power up here is pretty cool in terms of just doing damage to elites now. So they've gone away from the non-elite enemies kind of affix of it. They've also updated that Stain of Sin rank 3 negates elite affix powers to include Wormhole and Electrify. This is good. Wormhole is an terrible affix, and it's nice that it's also be included in being able to remove it. Now the Drakes of Lies have been completely reworked. So let's have a look at that, shall we? So we've updated the base power, so you deal 25% less damage, but your pets now deal 50% increased damage. So they've actually gone from just a flat damage to now being a pet kind of gem. And in rank 3, each time your pet hits an enemy, your damage is increased by 1% for 5 seconds. This stacks up to 100 times. That's big, right? When you reach 100 stacks, this stacks quickly resets to 0. Now this wording is a little bit funny, so we'll see how critical it actually is. But this looks pretty promising. And also they added rank 3 upgrade. Killing an elite enemy reduces all your active cooldowns by 5 seconds. This kind of works like an Indium, I guess. So this is pretty good for speed farming. Not really that great for something like a push, but this works really well. And then they removed the double the damage reduction enemies receive when you critical strike them. And also fixed the bug with Remnant of Pain rank 3 possibility power that caused collision issues with Mystic Ally. This was pretty annoying, so that's good. That's fixed now. Essence of Anguish. Now this is one of the biggest issues right now with the PTR, as it's so powerful. So let's have a look at how this changed, shall we? So base power, every time you do poison damage to an enemy, you increase your cooldown reduction and movement speed by 2.5%, while your damage received is increased by 5%. Now before this was doubled, so basically you would gain 5% cooldown reduction and movement speed per stack. Now they've nerfed that by half. That's pretty good. It was a bit too strong before in terms of just all the movement speed and cooldown you would get, That's a pretty good nerf. That should bring it a bit more down to the other gems. Now the big one here. Fix the bug that costs S of Anguish rank 3 upgrade death blow effect to cost more damage intended. This could actually one-shot elites and with guardians, so that's a really good thing that they've actually managed to fix that. And also they fixed a bug that would cost the rank 3 upgrade death blow effect to not trigger consistently. Basically sometimes it would just do the damage and sometimes it would do nothing. So it's very good that they made this consistent, so we actually rely on this power to work. And they also updated so the rank 3 death blow effect does not synergize with Sivers in their power. Basically Siver has an effect called enemies wrist in pieces. This basically means you hit an insane amount, like 30 quadrillion whatever, when you kill the enemy. And this will actually tie into the other power here, where you killing an enemy deals the damage stunned by the death blow to all enemies within 25 yards. So if you kill like one little bat with the Siver equipped in your cube or whatever, this would just do an insane amount of damage and then also kill a whiff gun on 150. So it's a very good bug fix. They also added a buff bar icon to keep track of the S of Anguish base effect, so basically so you know if you have the movement speed and cooldown reduction active. And they also did some updates in the toolbar, so it clarifies that only one player attacks can trigger the effect. So all in all, some pretty big changes to the season 25 theme. This does look very promising in terms of what they're gonna offer, and it's very good so far in terms of what they've nerfed, to bring all the gems to an equal and balanced level, I'd say. Especially the Sliver of Terror and S of Anguish, they need some big nerfs, and it looks like they're pretty good so far. But of course, we'll see more in the testing once we begin that. Now there's been some item changes as well, so basically updated Depth Diggers lend their power to work with all primary skills. There were some issues before without not working with all of them, so it's pretty good that they've fixed that now. This probably won't make it so other primary skills are gonna be that useful for most classes. For instance, Demon Hunter is still gonna be Hungering Arrow, but let's see if this actually makes it so other builds have some more primary skills to use. Now of course they updated Barbarian a little bit, so while both Wrath and Call of the Ancients are active, Hammer of the Ancients deal 600 to 18% increased damage. And the development note is that they wanted to make it so that the Hammer of Ancients playstyle want to be buffed and not a specific set. Now the Witch Starter was massively changed, so let's have a look at that, shall we? Now the Shokwani's Triumph, so basically Spirit Walk lasts until you attack 3 times or until an elite enemy is within 20 yards of you. Attacks when the Spirit Realm deals 75 to 100% increased damage. So basically this is very nice for being able to speed through a rift, and you also deal increased damage. So basically Witch Starter has been given a massive damage buff here. This was also on before the previous Pichanos, but basically this is very nice for the Witch Starter and should help a lot with speeds and just bring it to a more overall balanced level in terms of the other classes. Now Lukumba's Ornament reduce all damage taken by 60% if your Soul Harvest stack is at least 1 to 3, and there's 2% for each stack of Soul's Harvest. Now that was an issue before this PTR where you won't give the damage reduction on a Whiff Guardian, for instance, because you didn't give enough stacks. But now that 1 stack is enough, this is very nice in terms of the survivability of the Witch Doctor. And the Queen's Grasp is still the same, and the Brood of Arenaria is also still the same. Now the Archy set has been changed once again, quite big, so let's have a look at it. So they changed the 2 set bonus. Instead of Corpse Spiders now spawns with health and attacks twice as fast, you now summon a permanent Spider Queen connected to you by an infested thread. Enemies caught in a thread are infested. Corpse Spider attacks against infested enemies inflict the same damage to all infested enemies. The Spider Queen is commanded to move to a castle of Corpse Spiders, and Corpse Spiders now spawns with health. Now to me that sounds like a pretty big buff in terms of their just area of effect damage, so I'm very looking forward to seeing how this actually works. But so far, in terms of just reading this is very promising for the Witch Doctors. They also changed the 4-piece, so now the Spider Queen leaves behind a web that lasts for 15 seconds and slows enemies. Infested enemies remain infested while on the web, and you take 75% reduced damage while in the web and for 4 seconds after. This is very nice in terms of justifiability of Witch Starters. Just always struggle with that, so I'm very happy to see they've actually implemented some changes to help the Witch Starter with survivability. And a note, we've reworked Witch Starter's Spirit of Archy set, so as well as several legendary Witch Starter items. With those changes we hope to infuse the Archy with more flavor and gameplay, as well as give Witch Starters a much needed power increase. I could not agree more. This is very promising so far. Good change. And a bit more, Corpse Spiders are no longer favored by area control effects. It's good. You don't want to have all your damage just being cast away because of a frozen orb, for instance. Updated Ring of Emptiness to benefit attacks from all non-fetish pets as well now, so that's good. This was an issue before with the Ring of Emptiness. This should help a lot in terms of just giving the overall Witch Doctors some much more needed power. And a big buff as well, Corpse Spiders can now benefit from pet buffs. This should be massive. and we should see some pretty big buffs in terms of Witch Doctor overall for this now. And with the note, we've added a new mechanic to the Spirit of Anarchy set, which will give it a more active and thematic playstyle. Additionally, we've given corpse spiders the ability to benefit from several items that buff pets, which should give more power and gearing options. Now, by reading this looks very promising for the Witch Doctor, and I can't wait to play this and test how this works. Now for Demon Hunter, they've changed some stuff around. Now they have removed a 400% damage multiplier from the 4-piece marauder set. This was removed very early on in the PTR actually, so most of us haven't played with it, and we have seen 150 clears done without this. But basically there was a massive issue before where sentries would deal 400% increased damage. That would then be times by 12,000% and then times by 5 for each active sentry. So the damage increase was just massive and way too much. So basically by removing this 400% increased damage, they've actually managed to turn it down a notch and make it more competitive and balanced with the other sets. Now the marauder is actually pretty much the same as it was during the PTR, and I'm happy about that because the marauder set works really well. If you want to see a guide on how that build works specifically for multi-shot, I'll leave a link somewhere around up there. And you can have a look at the full guide on how that build works. Now for really good news, they have changed Bombarder's rucksack. So you may have 2 additional sentries. That was the same as before, but now Cluster Arrow deals 150 to 200% increased damage. This is really nice. Now by my calculations, this should bring Cluster Arrow very close to being competitive with multi-shot, at least in terms of pushing. As doing some kind of speed build, I would probably still use multi-shot just because of the attack speed and being able to move quicker. But for pushing, this actually makes Cluster Arrow a very big competitor for multi-shot, and a lot of people really enjoy the Cluster Arrow. I'm happy to see this changed. So to note here, we adjusted Demon Hunter marauder set to give some of its legacy functionality back. Basically that the sentries now also fire automatically and all your damage is done by the sentries. And they also buffed the Shadow Mantle set to make it more effective against multiple targets. There was an issue before with the Impale set that you would only deal damage to an enemy in front of you. So be very good at killing just one target, but they always lack the ability to kill things around it, so have effect damage. And I've been playing it a bit so far and it actually works really nice, and I'll have a guide on it shortly in terms of the Impale, so stay tuned for that one. In development note, so they added Cluster Arrow damage to Bombarder's rucksack, which will make Cluster Arrow work with the marauder set more appealing. This is very true and looks really nice so far. And the same as before, they buffed the Rathma set, basically increasing the damage from Army of the Dead by 750 up to 31,500%. Actually, Army of the Dead looks like a very strong build so far in the PTR. I'm curious to see how far they can actually push the Necromancer with the Army of the build. Because of all the cooldown reduction you're able to get from the new soul shards, the Army of the Dead build looks really good. Now for a big one. They have now changed the firebird set once again, so let's have a look at it. So they reversed their change before, taking it from 3000% damage to 1500. Now it's back to 3000, and as well as the 6-piece, now putting it back to 5k. This is very nice because basically this made that the firebird was completely out of the question. It just wouldn't be a viable set at all just based on pure numbers. But to make up for it, they've now made it so pets cannot trigger this effect. So basically the mirror image build is now out of the question, and I think a lot of wizards are really happy about this because they were a pain to use. And of course the developer note, so basically now with the new patch based on player feedback, we're taking a very different approach, and rather have pets do the heavy lifting. We want to lean into the fantasy of player being a brawling battle mage. So I actually really like this, and I hope this works out. And also a few bug fixes, I'll leave them on the screen. So basically this was a very good change so far. I'm really liking these new updates. The updates to the soul shards are very nice. I'm excited to see if this actually makes them more equal in terms of just level. And also the new updates to, for instance, the Directs of Lies actually make it so it is a playable gem. So I'm looking forward to see how this is implemented and how we use this. The changes to Witch Doctor and Wizard look amazing. I'm looking forward very much to playing with it, and so should you. And as Demon Hunter main, I'm very much looking forward to also playing the new Cluster Arrow, as it should now be very equal to power with multi-shot. Hope you enjoyed this video. What do you think of these new changes? Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out, folks.